Hi, Dr. Patrick Gentempo here, and thank you for joining us on our YouTube channel. We have great content in store for you. I'm so excited to be here with you, and let's jump right into it. Professor, thank you for inviting us here and for your time. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I'm an archaeologist. I'm teaching at the Kinneret College, the Department of the Study of the Land of Israel. And I'm an archaeologist in the Galilee for the last 40 years, digging mainly what we call classical archaeology, from the Hellenistic 3rd century BC to the late Byzantine 6th, 7th century CE. I was focusing on Byzantine churches and then on the Second Temple period Judaism in the Galilee. And that's the field, ancient synagogues. That's the field I'm doing for the last 40 years.
And where are we right now?
We are now at a site. Its Arabic name is ARAJ. Its Hebrew name is Beit Habek, which means the house of the Bek. Bek is a name in Turkish for a very rich person. This land, the entire valley, Bethsaida Valley, between the Golan Heights in our back and the Galilee in our front, he owned it in the late 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And he built here a farm and a palace for himself and his family. And he came here every winter. It's a nice place to be in the winter palace, rather in Damascus. And that's the origin of the Hebrew name. There was a little palace over here, 2 stories high building, white, with a red roof. Stood here from the end of the 19th century until 1955, with steps leading down to the Kinneret, to the lake. Very nice place. In the end of the 40s, beginning of the 50s, it became a Syrian military outpost. And there were Syrian soldiers here. It was the border between Israel and Syria until 1965, until the Six-Day War. The Jordan River was the border. And the Syrians had attacked many times the Israeli shipping boats on the lake. And therefore in 1955 the Israeli army attacked many of the Syrian outposts in around the Sea of Galilee. And one of the units came over here and blew up the building, which was the headquarters of this camp. And retreated, of course. In 1967, the Six-Day War, the entire area was conquered, including the Golan Heights. And since then, Israeli archaeologists were able to visit the place. This place is known from the end of the 19th century as one of the candidates for Bethsaida. And therefore, from the end of the 19th century, when scholars were interested.
And when you say one of the candidates, it was known that a place existed called Bethsaida, which means home of fishermen?
Yes.
And so they were searching, saying, it must be in this area somewhere. So you came looking for, trying to find the archaeology. Now, when was the dating for Bethsaida?
Bethsaida is first mentioned in the New Testament as the home place of 3 of the apostles, Peter, Andrew, and Philip. So if we put it in historical frame, let's say that around the 20s, 30s, we speak here about a Jewish village. And then Josephus Flavius tells us about the place. He was here in 66. He became the governor of Galilee for the first Jewish revolt against the Romans. So he came here in 66, and he is a little military clash between his units and the soldiers of Agrippa II from the Golan, King Agrippa II from the Golan. And he said that the battle was near Julias, and that he was wounded. He fell into the swamps, so it's a swampy area. And here we got to the name Julius. So he tells us that in the year 30, King Herod Philip, who was the former king of Golan area, the son of Herod the Great, decided to upgrade the position of the village Bethsaida, made it a polis, and renamed it Julius, after the daughter of the emperor. That's the story from Josephus, which we believe there's no reason not to believe that it is true. And therefore, that's a place we connect Julius and Bethsaida and the location. So the location is very clear. It's a swampy area near the Jordan. That's what Josephus tells us. It's in this valley that is later on called Bethsaida. And we can be sure that we speak here about a Jewish village in the 1st century BC, 1st century CE, which was upgraded to be a polis around the year 30. So scholars were looking for the remains of a Jewish village and a polis from the early Roman period. And from the end of the 19th century, there were 3 candidates. First one is a site called Etel, which is a tell, a biblical tell, just about 2 kilometers northeast from us, about 2 kilometers from the shore of the Sea of Galilee. The second one is called Mas'udiyah, which is 2 kilometers to the east. And the third one is ARAJ, which is the site we are in right now. Each scholar at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century was fighting or suggesting which site is the better. Some of them were sure that Etel is better one, it's high on a hill. And some suggested ARAJ, mainly because on surface there were a lot of architectural fragments like pillars, bases, capitals and things like that, which disappeared mostly during the year. 30 years ago, a colleague, a friend, Rami Arav, started excavating at Etel and discovered houses dated from the late Hellenistic to the early Roman period, late 2nd century BCE, 1st century BCE, and 1st century CE. And therefore, he suggested that Etel is Bethsaida now as a scientific result from the excavation. There are houses from the 1st century, therefore this is Bethsaida. He continued to dig for 30 years. He finished the Roman period. He got down. He found a very, very interesting Old Testament city, an Armenian city. Very interesting, but not connected to our story, of course. But during these years, he continued calling it Bethsaida, and therefore it got its name even in the scientific world, for sure in the public. Even the Ministry of Tourism of Israel, after 1967, of course, when it became in Israeli territory, and after the excavations, put a sign on the main road saying Bethsaida, showing Etel, and on the side they developed some touring trails and some signs. So everyone knows that this is Bethsaida, but the disagreement continued all these years. There are other scholars suggested that it's wrong, mainly because it's far away from the Kinneret, but also because there were no remains at all of any urban sphere.
Right.
There are 2 houses that look like rural villagers' houses, fishermen houses. And therefore the debate continued. 2 years ago, we did here the first season of excavations. Even before that, we did a little survey, and even before that, others did some surveys here. And there were 1st century, early Roman period pottery found on the ground. Rami Arav suggested that these pottery came with floods from other areas, and therefore it's not an early Roman site. He said that in the early Roman period, El Araj was submerged 2 meters below the Sea of Galilee, and therefore there is no Roman layer here. He even strengthened his opinion by coming here and digging some 25 years ago or so. He came here and dug 2 squares here, and he said, we found here Byzantine structures, including Byzantine pottery. We dug below it, we found nothing. Therefore, the site was inhabited only in the Byzantine period.
Which was much later.
Which is 5th, 6th century AD. This was the situation until we came to dig. And we came last summer. It is the Kinneret Institute for Galilean Archaeology, which is part of the Kinneret College, and Nyack College in New York. My colleague, Professor Steve Notley, with American students and volunteers. We came here and dug last year. This was the first season. And we discovered here 2 layers. The upper one was 13th century AD, which in Israel is the Crusader period.
Right.
There was a sugar factory here. Below it, there are remains of Byzantine period houses, which we suggest to be probably a monastery that existed around a church. And that's the schism was over. But we, of course, did not get to our final target. Final target in archaeology is to get into virgin soil. Only when you get to a virgin soil you can say, okay, there is nothing below it.
Right.
Whether it is natural rock or virgin soil, meaning no pottery in the soil.
Right.
We didn't finish. So we came this last summer. We took off some of the floors of the Byzantine period and we dug below them. Some 20-30 centimeters below the Byzantine floors we hit Roman period layer.
Wow.
1.5 meters of layers that included Roman pottery only. No Byzantine, no 13, only Roman pottery, which is late 1st century BC, 1st century CE to the 3rd century CE.
Wow.
Including 2 coins. One of them is very clear, it's a silver coin from the time of Emperor Nero, the year 65, and another one which is Roman from the 2nd century. So first of all, we can say that the site of ARAJ is back on the stage.
Thanks so much for being here and watching that video. And can I ask you to please subscribe to our channel so you can find out when we're posting new content. You'll be alerted right away when we do. To share this with people you think might benefit from the information, and certainly it helps us if you like the video. So if you like what you just saw, go ahead and hit that like button. And again, thank you so much for being here with me right now.